multiplying with integers. Integers are the counting numbers, their opposites, and 0. And so we have already reviewed that every number, such as 5, has an opposite, -5. So whole numbers, again, are just counting numbers and 0. The counting numbers alone are called the natural numbers. Integers are those same counting numbers and their opposites, 5 and -5, 3, -3, 7, -7, are all integers. When we multiply with integers, we have to pay attention to the negative sign. We've got 3 times 5 is 15, and with prime factorials, we're generally not using the times symbol. And a 3 next to a 5 is 3 times 5 for 15. Now, if it was -3 times 5, well, that's like having the opposite of 15. So if 3 times 5 is 15, a -3 times 5 is the opposite of 3 times 5. It's the opposite of 15. If I do 3 times -5, it's the same situation. It's the opposite of 3 times 5. It's the opposite of 15 or -15. So again, we can do 3 times 5, or we could do -3 times 5, or we could do -5 times 3. 5 times 3, 15. -5 times 3, -15. -3 times 5, -15. What happens when it's -3 times -5? Well, in the same way that 3 times 5 was 15, -3 turned 15 into -15, the opposite. Negative, or -1, times -15 would turn it into its opposite, just 15. So again, multiplying with negative numbers, we go back to what we already know with whole number multiplication. 2 times 7 is 14. -2 times 7 can't be positive 14. It's got to be the opposite sign, -14. Same goes if it was -7 times 2. 7 times 2 will always be 14. The presence of that -1 makes it -14. And if we had a negative times a second negative, we've got to think the opposite and then the opposite again. So the 2 times the 7 will always be 14. The opposite of 14, -14. The opposite of that -14 would have to be 14.